What's the one word you held back from someone for years until you couldn't anymore? I got adopted at 14, and for 8 years I called the man who raised me by his first name, Hollis, never Dad. He never asked me to change it. Then 3 weeks ago I found him on the floor of his shop with a car on his chest, and the word I'd been swallowing all that time came out of me before I could stop it. Let me back up. Hollis runs a one-man auto shop 2 blocks from the house. When I moved in, he'd already cleared out the back room. A bed against the wall, a lamp, a power strip for my stuff. No speech, no welcome banner. He just handed me the key and mentioned the door locked from the inside if I ever wanted it to. That meant more than he could have known. After 4 homes in 2 years, we fell into a rhythm fast. He'd leave for the shop before sunrise, I'd get myself to school, and most nights he'd come back grease-stained and quiet, asking how my day went while he scrubbed his hands at the kitchen sink. I'd give him the short version. He never dug for more. It was easy. But I still called him Hollis. I'm 22 now. I stuck around after I aged out because Hollis never once acted like the clock was running on me. He taught me to drive in the shop lot. He co-signed my first apartment. He showed up to my community college graduation in the only button-down he owns and clapped way too loud. Last winter he changed my brakes without telling me because he heard them grinding when I pulled in. But I still called him Hollis. It almost slipped once. At that graduation, when they read my name, the announcer said something about family in the stands, and Hollis half stood with this look on his face. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. He just sat back down and gave me a thumbs up. Neither of us ever mentioned it. 3 weeks ago, I drove over to the shop after closing to drop off the thermos he'd left on the counter. The lights were still on, and the bay door was half up. I ducked under it, calling his name. No answer. His truck was parked out front. Then I saw his legs sticking out from under the old Buick he'd been fighting for a month, except it wasn't on the lift. It was up on jack stands, and one of them had kicked sideways across the floor. The front end of the car had come down onto his chest. I don't remember deciding to move. I got the floor jack under the frame and pumped it like my life depended on it, yelling at him to hold on. The car lifted an inch, then another. I grabbed him under the arms and dragged him out across the concrete. His breathing was all wrong, short, scraping, like he couldn't fill up. I called 911 with one hand pressed flat on his chest. The dispatcher asked things I could barely answer. They asked if he was conscious, and that's when it came out of me with no decision behind it. Dad, stay with me, please. I said it again. Dad, don't you do this. He didn't answer. His eyes were sliding back in his head. I didn't even hear myself saying it. I was just trying to keep him in the room. The ambulance took 9 minutes that felt like a year. 3 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, internal bleeding they said they caught with maybe an hour to spare. They worked on him right there on the shop floor, then loaded him up and were gone. I followed in his truck, hands shaking too hard to trust the drive. They had him in surgery for 3 hours. I sat in a plastic chair and called nobody, because there isn't anybody else to call. Around 2 a.m., a nurse said he was stable, then asked if I was family. I said yes before she finished asking. They let me back the next afternoon when he woke up. Groggy, taped up, already furious, he couldn't sit himself up. He saw me in the doorway, and his face did something I'd never seen it do. He patted the blanket for me to come closer. You called me Dad, he said. His voice was gravel. I froze. I thought he'd been knocked out cold the whole time. What? In the shop. When you pulled me out from under that car. You said it 3 times. I started to say I didn't remember, which was true, then stopped. You were awake for that? In and out, he said. Couldn't move, couldn't talk, but I heard you. He went quiet, then said, I'd let that car drop on me again to hear it. My throat closed up completely. I told him not to joke about that. He reached over, the IV line pulling tight, and wrapped his hand around my wrist with the grip of a man who's held a wrench for 30 years. 8 years, he said. I'd made my peace with being Hollis. Figured that's just how it'd stay. I couldn't get a single word out. I just held onto his hand. You don't have to keep saying it, he said. Softer now. I heard it once. That's enough for the rest of my life. I said it anyway. Yeah, Dad, I know.